we will continue with the Christmas story. Today we will read the story titled Unauthorized Celebration. I'm seated here, with 12 strangers, at a table covered with a faded red cloth, set with antique dishes and cutlery. 3 candles flicker constantly, and most of us don't know or remember why. The food is good, made with ancient ingredients that are hard to come by and expensive, so the portions are small. Most of it is too salty or sweet for my tastes, but the recipes must be followed. It all started in 2022, long before my time when religious celebrations were still safe and legal. So, we now call this our winter gathering, and still practice this ritual every December. I don't know how the money lasted for so many decades, it is still paid, so the tradition continues. This is the story of the first winter gathering, in what was the United States of America. It's supposed to be an accurate tale handed down for generations. Still, some say it's a myth or legend and never happened. Just like all religious-based writings, no matter the faith, they are forbidden. There were 13 copies of the rules, but only one remains that we are sure of. This is the most original version of the story told by a child at the first gathering, and she said, "We were all seated around the table for Christmas dinner when someone knocked on the door. Dad got up to answer it, thinking it was a neighbor or carolers, but it was an elderly woman who we thought was a stranger. She carried a gift about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in beautiful green paper that sparkled, and a red velvet bow. She entered the dining room and smiled at us, saying, 'Merry Christmas.' My parents and I, my grandparents, 2 aunts, 1 uncle, and 3 other children. Finally, Grandma said, 'I'm sorry, but do we know you?' She smiled and said, 'Probably not. I'm your second cousin from Canada. My name is Marie Trod, and I've come to share a traditional family gift with you here in America. I must do it before I die, and I'm 85 and thought I'd better not put it off any longer.' Dad made a place at the table for her and invited her to join us. We hadn't started eating yet, and the table looked so pretty. We filled her plate with turkey and all the fixings and set it before her. She thanked us, but I noticed she never ate a bite or took a sip of wine or water. Marie seemed to enjoy our company and chatter and Grandpa's silly jokes. She asked what we enjoyed about this meal, and most of us said it was the food, but the older folks said the company. She remained seated while Mom and Grandma cleared the table, so we stayed instead of running to the living room to watch TV. She placed the gift in front of her and opened it. Strange. Then Maria opened the gift she had brought, removed it, and gave each person a white envelope but said not to open it. Then she took one out for herself and began to read, "Dear family and friends, each of you, even babies, received a document with identical instructions. They are as follows. From next year on, you will continue to have a traditional family Christmas dinner. All faiths are included, but it's a Christmas tradition. When you die or cannot attend, you must choose a replacement. The food must consist of turkey, chicken, or roast beef. 1 root vegetable, 1 green vegetable, salad or relish tray, cranberries, home-cooked or shaped like a can, rolls, 3 kinds of dessert, pie, cake, trifle, as long as there are 3, water. Wine, 1 or 2 glasses per adult. No hard liquor. The dinner must be in a home, not a restaurant or rented hall, and the home will be selected by a volunteer for the following year's dinner. If this is not possible, then a rented room in a home-like setting, such as a bed and breakfast or a non-member's home. Christmas Day is preferred, but if not possible, 1 day in December each year. There must be a tablecloth, napkins, china, pottery dishes, no paper or plastic, on the table. The utensils are placed as shown in the diagram here. Silver or stainless flatware. 3 candles on the table representing hope, love, and unity. Guests should arrive by 4 p.m. and stay for at least 2 hours. All guests will take part in the cleanup after the meal. Optional. A gift exchange. Christmas crackers. Music, recorded or live. A tree and/or decorations. An attorney or legal representative will also be present to observe that these requests, rules, are followed. Each qualifying guest will receive a check for $5,000 via registered mail within 10 days. Then Marie stood and said, "I know this sounds strange, but there will be a time when this group will be essential for human history." She then walked out, and we never saw her again. We followed these instructions for as long as I lived, and hope they are continued. So here we are, 12 descendants or friends of descendants or strangers. I've met some of these folks over the past 5 years. People come and go or choose not to continue, calling it silly and pointless, even with the stipend. Many of us look forward to it. Such a quaint and friendly tradition. The food has changed over the years because few people eat meat or fowl anymore, so everything is plant-based or bioproduced. A few things remain, like cranberries in some form and vegetables. One of the longest-standing members or a volunteer is entrusted with keeping the tub of tablecloths, which shows its age, and someone cleans and mends it. They also store china remains or replaces pieces as they wear out or break. It is rare now but was very cheap and plentiful at thrift shops for many years, so duplicates were added when these items became increasingly rare and expensive. All enjoy the meal and the companionship. However, sitting on a hard chair while eating is uncomfortable, and I no longer use forks or spoons. We play the recorded music low and don't exchange gifts, as we want to avoid calling attention to what we do. Gathering in groups is frowned upon and sometimes dangerous, with drones and cameras everywhere. Sometimes we are referred to as an ancient, secret cult and are accused of all sorts of rituals, such as human sacrifice or unauthorized sexual practices. But all we do is relive a much revered tradition from long ago. God will bless you. We will continue with the Christmas story. Today we will read the story titled Kindred Spirits. The music swam through the warm bodies of people swaying and moving to its gentle rhythm in the center of the large, lavish family home. The man, dancing his fingers across the piano keys, entranced everyone, and those who weren't very enthused kept to themselves, lurking in the farthest corners of the house, or outside on the deck. Chattering amongst each other, the melodies and the voices, all mixing and splashing into one another like an approaching sea storm. Ever steadily overwhelming Dan Clendale, who stood in the center of it, sipping on a ruby cocktail, nervously awaiting someone, a coworker. His cerulean eyes bounced off of every face and shoulder and floorboard. A couple rocking away with one another, rocked right into him, and it caused him to spill his sacred drink all over and stain his once pristine, finely tailored tux. He huffed, stepping back, watching as the sloshed individuals bid themselves adieu without even as much as a grunt of an apology in return. Dan pouted, glancing back down at his blemished attire, brining a hand to his chest and trying, fruitlessly, to bat away any more wetness that seeped through the fabric of his shirt and kissed his warm flesh, chilling him to the core. But once he glanced back up, the pianist had begun to play "Baby It's Cold Outside," as Dan's eyes locked with whom he was waiting so long for. Sheepishly, smiling back, as he stepped closer. "Hey Will," Dan said, breathlessly. "Hey Danny," Will smirked, raising a mug of spiked eggnog, his other hand slicking back his damp brunette curls. All gathering, and sticking to his forehead in result of his rather enthusiastic partying. "Look up," he said pointedly. Dan raised his blonde, barely visible brow, before he did as he was told. His saliva then clung to his throat as he inaudibly choked. "A mistletoe. You know the rules." Danny O'Camere, swiftly, Will grasped his ebony tie, in one motion wrapping it, and jerking Dan forward right into his awaiting lips, of which tasted so salty, and stung with liquor, and it made something blossom in Dan's chest fervently, as he eased into the unexpected. The music had died, and the murmurs had died, everything had perished of all sound, and reduced to shadows, all of it disappeared to Dan, except for Will, and only Will, as they met. What seemed like centuries, only mere seconds, when Will practically flung Dan off of him just a moment after their lips touched. So taken aback by the jostle, and the kiss alone, he lost his balance. With a thwomp, his ass hit the linoleum and everything came back. As if someone turned the lights back on, and he realized just how small he was, but it was still quiet. Unconjured silence. The pianist had halted his playing, and all that remained were the whispers of his fellow colleagues as they gawked and spoke in hushed tones at what they just surveyed before them. Dan reluctantly peered at those who surrounded him, those he worked alongside, all eyeing the both of them with wide, puzzled expressions. Will spat to the side, and then a howl of a laugh erupted out of his crooked maw, and it tore Dan's attention back to his display, swallowing. Will? Barg. He grumbled and waved his hand, turning on an uneasy heel and sauntering off, pushing people out of his way as he did so, gathering himself at the makeshift bar, and Dan watched him go, with a mortified look. Not by the kiss, no, that was, frankly, magical, but it all decimated into ash the moment William Stanley shoved him back, and spat whatever feeling they tasted right out of his mouth. Feeling crushed was an understatement. Dan was mortally humiliated, choking back with a hard swallow every nasty piece of venom had he to say, but was all stuck in his windpipe. stuffed down by despair and utter heartache. Dan then collected myself, undeviating to his feet, exerting himself rather some to ignore the eyes that prodded at him, and the whispers that taunted him. He just moved by to get his way to the front door, and luckily down the hall. Just before the exit the people gathered there were still oblivious and minding to their own. With a sigh he departed, and once he stepped out into the cold, Jack Frost nipped at his nose and it took a few paces until he was under the falling snow, watching it make its angelic descent from above where it gathered up in pile of sparkling ivory heaps. Dan took in a deep breath, and he tried not to cry, frankly. He felt like everything was immaterial and vague, felt light and heavy at the same time. In a breath of a moment in time, felt infinite and light, and in the same second, all of which was incomprehensible joy, was whisked away and burned into nothingness and numb. There was emptiness, shallow. He then shut his eyes, to collect himself some more, and as he lifted a boot to trek onward towards his Satan, he felt a grasp at his shoulder and nearly socked whom snatched him in a panicked frenzy. But it was Will, and he narrowed his brows dangerously at him, tearing himself from his grasp as he hissed, "What the hell do you want?" Though Dan did stall for a moment, when registered the same pain in Will's eyes. Like a mirror, they reflected the same agony he, himself was swallowed in. Will then broke the silence with a clear his throat, "I'm sorry. Danny." "Don't," Dan said in a hushed whisper, but he ignored his soft, lackluster plea, moving closer until they were merely inches apart from each other. "No, I'm so sorry, Daniel. He gave him a very timid smile, shrugging his arms. "I been drinking. I just was so excited to have any reason to kiss you. But I'm a drunk asshole that doesn't know what he wants, Danny." That, his expression darkened, saddened like a rain cloud washing over a once perfectly normal day, "doesn't know what he wants," his voice cracked at the end. Dan was. He couldn't control himself when the palms of his hands met his warm, freckly, stubbly cheeks and so effortlessly pulled him in. And this time, they kissed, and it was brighter, and warmer, and softer. Will melted against it like he'd been a star frozen in space and now been blessed by the sun's orbit, its comforting, scorching embrace. Like sparks, Dan's lips felt tingling when they did eventually part for air, and that's when he witnessed Will smile, a dumb, love-sick smile. His chipped tooth hidden when he smirked, now flashing with no hesitation. Dan couldn't think of nothing but Will, and to find some reprieve from the immense pressure just his gaze alone had to render him, he turned to the street lamps once more, and listened as the snow damped the earth all around. Listened to the music that began to ring out the house once more, and he felt William's hands slip into his calloused own. "Merry Christmas, Danny," he whispered as he gave his hand a squeeze, and then turned to disappear back into the autumn glow of the party inside. And Danny smiled, gently then to himself as he felt the wound inside his soul mend in just one moment. With that fucking man, he could laugh, and cry and die happily. From just knowing William Stanley. Wiping a hand over his face, he then rejoined the kindred spirits inside, and I wouldn't